We have no relation to Alan Lindquest, and the claiming that he coached Birgit Nilsson in 1938 is also not right. And so I've told David Jones that that's not right. I knew her very well. I played at master classes with her several times, and I taught a lot to her. I had never been in Stockholm before 1941 when she started at the Academy of Music. And she had only had a local teacher in the south of Sweden. And then the first time she ever met Hislop was when she came to Stockholm in 1941.
Straight into this famous NG is kind of it's central to the Swedish-Italian concept, I guess we could call it.
No, it isn't. Some of the things they claim in America, I can understand this with the NG position, but they have turned it upside down. I finally understood where they got it from. But they start with trying to put the tongue in an active position. I'm not discussing if these people were right or wrong.
Yeah.
There's ways to do it. I just tell what they were doing. And I think if you claim that you teach according to what they were doing, you should do that also, not something else.
Right?
He was approaching 90 years of age,
Wow.
but here was this great man who had studied with Enrico Caruso and all the great teachers of the Italian school. He had also studied with UC Bjoerling's teacher and one of Kirsten Flagstad's teachers. So there was a very, very long lineage behind this training called the Swedish-Italian school, which is really a mixture of Italian concepts.
There's a lot of famous names are thrown around because we have Caruso and Bjoerling, Nilsson and Flagstad, and as far as I can tell, there's no real way to connect these people into one.
No, with Nilsson, she's out of this first of all. And then not all famous Swedish singers studied with one of these people. There were other singing teachers that were good also, but they didn't publish and they're not as known. When it comes to Jussi Björling, he was to 99% a product of his father. He started to study with his father when he was 4 years old, as his brothers. And they had singing lessons every day, more or less, until he was 17 years old when his father died. And he never actually changed. Have you read the little book of Jussi Björling's father?
No, I haven't.
I got it somewhere. I'll make a copy. It's both in because they traveled, they toured a lot in America when Jussi Björling was young. Björling made quarters. His father and from the beginning also his mother, but she died early. But then the father and the three brothers. And then their father wrote a little book, Hur man ska sjunga, how to sing. It's very small. Half of it in Swedish and the other one is an English translation. And he talks about how to start when you start with young children voices. They actually believe, both him and Albert Lange, the most important teacher of Dr. Bratt, that the best way of training opera singers was to start with them before they were 5 years old. On one reason, and modern psychology has confirmed this, when we are 3 years old, we can't lie. You put children in a room and you put a box of candy and you go out and you film them. And then you come back and you ask them, have you taken any sweets? If they're 3 years old, they will either say, they will be honest, they will say, no, I didn't. And then they didn't do it. Or if they did it, they will say, yes, I did. When they're 5 years old, they do the same experiment. I've actually seen it on TV. And it's quite known, this experiment. Then they lie.
Wow.
But here was this great man who had studied with Enrico Caruso and all the great teachers of the Italian school. He had also studied with UC Bjoerling's teacher and one of Kirsten Flagstad's teachers. So there was a very, very long lineage behind this training called the Swedish.
If they've taken Swedes, they will say no. And if they, or at least, but they know, in some way. But then, the relation between this and between this works automatically before this. It's around the age of 5 we start to fuck it up, so to speak. And the whole system collapses, what nature has given us, so to speak. And they believe that connect to that, and they did it with these blowing out exercises. The first thing you did when you was born wasn't breathe in, you blew out the foster water, you see. And then the inhalation comes directly as a need of oxygen. Also, when it came to most of it, they tried to get to, no, mama, my stupid mother, you know, the pathetic language. They tried to connect in many ways to what's done. Even Jussi Bjoerling talks about this in an article much later, that there's something that we know when we are children that we lose, and we have to connect to that.
Now, it's quite common for experts to say that it's child abuse to even let a child think about opera.
No, no, they actually thought that singing opera, if you did it good, was the most natural way of singing.
Yes.
Because it was mostly connected to the very, very primitive functions we knew how to do when we were children. Jussi had then studied with his father for many, many years. And then the father died. And he auditioned for the Academy of Music. The boss there was actually John Forsell, opera singer. He was boss of the opera house, Royal Opera in Stockholm. He was professor of solo singing at the Academy of Music. And he was the boss of the opera school. He was the dictator of opera life in Sweden in the 20s and 30s until 1940. So you had to study with him whether you wanted or not. And he was not a very good singing teacher. He was an old timer from the Garcia time, who used a lot of vowel modifications. Jussi started to study with him at the Academy of Music then, and then he came home, and his brother started to mocking him and making fun of him with all these vowel modifications. Just told him, why don't you sing like father taught us instead? So Jussi Bjoerling went into John Forsell, and it was very brave to do, because he could lose everything. And just told him, either I'm going to sing like father told me, or I'm not going to sing at all. And then this dictator that he was, he understood this is the most genius singer I will meet in my whole life. So he let him have it his way, and they just worked with interpretations instead. Now, the father of Jussi had not allowed him to sing above B flat, because he thought as a young one you shouldn't do that because it's not grown to finish growing here. So he was only allowed to sing out of B flat. And then when he was starting to try out for himself, then the B natural, the high C, it worked sometimes, and sometimes it didn't work. I know this because I knew 3 of his children. I actually worked with 3 of his children. 2 of them in more amateur connections, and one of them was the leading spinto tenor at the Royal House and Opera when I started there. That was his first child, the illegitimate one, man you don't know about. Anyhow. So it clicked sometimes. It didn't work always. And then he had a pal at the Academy of Music who said, let's go to Joseph Hislop. He has got good high notes. So they went to Hislop. And Jussi Bjoerling tried to sing something, I don't know what. La Speranza Bohème. La Speranza, of course then. And then Hislop said something. Tried like this. La Speranza. And then Hislop was not a very nice person, but he got angry and he sang it himself. And he banged his fist into the grand piano. God damn it, can't you imitate me at least? And then Jussi Bjoerling got angry because he also had a temper and he sang the high C. Just because he got the energy to do it and he got the courage to do it. And then he more or less repeated it sometimes, and when he stopped hesitating, before thinking it's going to be right, and instead he believed in what he was doing, then it just came. I mean, it was just a small adjustment for him to do. Then he was invited to study with Hislop in the summer of 1932. He was with Hislop, I think it was 2 weeks. And Hislop has said himself that Jussi Bjoerling learned more in one lesson than any other student learned in 1 year. Which says something about Jussi Bjoerling, but it also says that it was not especially difficult to teach him. And I think much of the teaching was done through imitation. That was the amount of Jussi Bjoerling studies with Hislop. Then he studied with him. He went to him in 1938. His agent paid him to go to Hislop to restudy his parts in Italian before his debut at the Metropolitan in New York. Because as was the custom of the time, he had only been singing his parts in Swedish. You know, everywhere except at the Metropolitan in New York, you sang in the language of the audience, not in the language of the composer librettist. So that was the amount of studies he had. You can't call it studies. It's like a mantra more, yes, much more a mantra, yeah. And that was their sort of and contact. When it comes to Flagstad and Halldis Ingibert, Ingibert was the assistant of Dr. Bratt. She was not the famous dramatic soprano herself. Like Dr. Bratt, that's another thing. Bratt never sang. He sang in public 2 concerts when he was young. He never sang at the Opera House in Stockholm. He was not on that level. Neither did Ingibert. She was his assistant. She studied with him and became his assistant. Because Bratt was also a throat doctor and he had his clinic. Half-time throat doctor, half-time voice teacher with actors and with singers, both of them. Then when he died in 25, Ingibert took over his students. And she had 2 of her own that became quite well known. It was the Norwegian soprano Åse Nordmo Löfberg, and it was a Swedish baritone called Hugo Hislop. He's a magnificent singer. He never sang abroad. The war came and after that, all the houses were bombed in Europe after the war, and he was so old when he couldn't go out. He studied with Ingibert, and then he went to Hislop when Ingibert went home to Norway in 39. And Hislop immediately wanted to make a tenor of him. And he sang 2 performances as a tenor, and then he stopped going to Hislop. And he talked very bad about Hislop, he said. And then he went back to Ingibert for a couple of lessons and sang Wagner repertoire again. Although Ingibert was known to sort of develop methods of her own. And sometimes they made the voices heavy, and also some tendencies to stiffen the jaw part. I don't really know why, but that was said. Flagstad on her side, she never talks about Ingibert when she mentions her teachers. Never. She talks about the first one, a family friend in Norway when she was young, who, Flagstad got vocal scores for birthday presents and for Christmas presents when she was 10 or 11. She was a very talented pianist. So she played through all the Lohengrin when she was 11 or 12 years old and sang all the parts. And then she got new Kroska and Aida and Livalkur and all of that. And then she sang all the parts and played herself. And then this family friend said, let me give her some lessons, otherwise she will have no voice when she's 14 or 15. So that was her first teacher. And then she studied with a Norwegian bass singer, Albert Westvang, who she claims was the one who gave her magnificent breathing technique, keeping phrases for forever and forever and forever. And then she wanted to go to Germany to study, but it was during the First World War. So she went to Stockholm, and she went to the Opera House in Stockholm, and she listened to the performance. Which persons do I think sing well? And then she found out that the one she liked studied with Dr. Gillis Valdemar Bratt. So she contacted him. But she only mentions these 3. The first lady in Oslo, the Westvang bass in Oslo, and Dr. Gillis Bratt. She never talks about Ingibert as a teacher. It seems that Ingibert was also then more the second year. Someone she contacted now and then, but not someone that really taught her new things. More checking that she didn't abbreviate totally from it. It's interesting, though, that Flagstad developed problems with the high notes quite early, already until around 45. And I know from this baritone who studied with is dead now since long, this Hugo Hislop, who studied with Ingibert, that Flagstad paid for a boat trip for Ingibert to go to New York and work with her for a while. But they did. I don't know if the Flagstad voice got too wide because of the work with this. They said that could happen with Ingibert. But the thing is, they did not fix the top. She started to avoid all the high Cs when she could after that, around this time. while the rest of the voice was magnificent. The teaching of Hislop and the teaching of, especially the teaching of Hislop, had very little to do with the teaching of Dr. Bratt. The teaching of Ingibert had much more to do with it, but none of them was a teacher on that level. And I'm very much against these family trees things, because they don't say anything really. It's very rarely that a really good teacher have students that also become as good teachers. It's another talent. Many good teachers are the ones with really bad teaching, who have to really figure out what is really done. So in Sweden, the highest regarded of the teacher of the students of Dr. Bratt was a woman by the name of Dagmar Gustafsson. But she didn't develop so much big dramatic voices. She had another more lyrical approach to singing. But there's several fine. She didn't. Bratt, after this preliminary thing that I talked about, he started increasing the compression. No, but it was always done not by the start. It was not by pushing more from underneath. It was started by exaggerating the inhalation sensations, and then the other muscles were started to, because you wanted to express yourself, they started to contract by themselves, which was very good for these Wagnerian things. This is the way where Bratt didn't go with the Stau principles of his second teacher, partly that Albert Lange had, because they increased the compression in another way, and it became a little more, sitting on the toilet trying to get rid of what we got there, and not being able to do it, so to speak. But overall, this kind of giving yourself credibility or authority by talking about who you have studied with, and other people studied with that person, that really doesn't say anything about anyone as a teacher. It's not in my book.
These problems with David Jones, with the information that was being presented, or give him any sources